This is my daughter Laura. She'll be an 11th grader next year, and I'm going to ask her about some of her middle school experiences at King, and then I'm also going to ask her about her an experience she had last year in her high school history class.
Well, I think that they probably do that on purpose. They choose one student that they sort of expect to carry the group, and
Mm-hmm.
then place them with students that they don't think are as capable as doing the work on their own. And in retrospect, that seems like it would work because you would end up with a final product. But it's the whole issue is that you get graded as a group, and you're not creating another piece of you're not creating another product that says, well, this is the work that was done by this person and this person and this person. Well, for that particular expedition, there was like a list of um, requirements that we had to meet, and our final product had to be a movie about it, and so each person would get a role and have to film their role. Um, and you have to write your script for it and do the research for it. I think for that expedition, I was the only person who was um, dedicated to it, I guess. But it was like someone would write something, and then I would look at it because I like to be a leader, and I'm kind of a control freak, and so I need to make sure that everything is up to my standard. And they would rehearse their part, and they would in the video it looked like it was evenly distributed, but what wasn't put into that is the amount of editing that went into it. So like when you make these films, you have to edit out certain spots, and you have to combine videos and do green screens and stuff like that. And there was one point in my video when there was a blank spot, and I was really annoyed because I felt like I'd put all this work into it, and it still didn't really come out that well because it was like one person doing a four-person project.
And why did the other three people not do as much work as you did?
Probably because they were people who required teachers to constantly be on them and telling them to finish their work and telling them.
Because of attentional issues or because of skills? Like, did they need support from teachers to be able to do the skills, or were they just not as focused on?
One girl I remember was pretty focused on doing a thorough job. One boy didn't really ever come to school, and so like the only time he was there was to film it, so like we ended up having to write his script and do his editing. And then the other boy we had was um, a new English speaker,
So
so
he just needed a lot of
he
support.
needed a lot of support anyways. And so I mean he was working really hard to just be able to recite what we had written for him.
Right. So for him, that was probably the skill that
Yeah.
was most appropriate at that time. Okay, so then fast forward now, you're in 10th grade, and your history teacher says it's a group grade. Everybody has to participate in the discussion. And
We got a group grade and we got a individual grade, and the group grade and the individual grade both counted for the same amount. And in order to get a good group grade, every single person in the class had to speak at least once. And if there couldn't, and to get a good individual grade, you had to speak and then not speak too much. And the first semester, I got an 100 on my individual grade, and we got an 83 as our group grade. And I was really mad because that brought my 100 down to like an 89 or a 90. And in class, she was like, well, the kids who didn't speak, that helped their grade, and the kids who did, it hurt their grade. And I felt like that wasn't fair to the kids who had been trying to make an effort because their grade, why even try if your grade is going to get demoted because of what the class isn't doing? And there's a lot of kids who they just don't want to speak in front of their whole class, or they don't feel confident enough that their points are important to speak in front of the class. And so but she didn't really see it that way. She more saw it as like saying anything will help you and make your grade better, but which wasn't really true, because she also did this thing where she had a sheet of paper and she drew a circle on it and wrote all of our names around the circle and made lines like where the conversation was going. And then next to every person's name would make notes about what they wrote or what they said, and that would affect how they were graded.
That would be the individual grade or the group grade?
Individual.
Okay. I mean, that actually seems like a workable system to keep track of everybody in the group.
Yeah, no, it is, but it's like some kids get compensation for being good listeners and stuff like that, and she didn't think about that. And the other problem is, after that first grade came out, the kids who had been trying harder tried less, because they were like, well, it doesn't matter because my grade is still going to be not as good as I want it to be.
So it's interesting, and I'm going to have to paraphrase here because I was going to look this up and I didn't. But she said in your final grade that you worked really hard to make sure that everyone else in the class had an opportunity to speak, and that everyone did. And in your specific comment, grade comment, she essentially said that you met the expectation that everyone was going to speak, that your efforts made that thing happen.
Well, yeah, because then I was that annoying kid that was like, oh, what does Julia want to say? Like, I was the kid that the quiet kids get annoyed about because you ask them specifically.
Okay. All right. So here's my last question. You have said that you might want to be a teacher, and I'm wondering, how long have you felt that way?
In like third grade, when I was switching from Cathedral to Reiki, you know how they put me in the really low class because they didn't have any records from Cathedral? I liked having the power of being able to say, like, oh, I know how to do this, and then helping the other kids in my class.
Okay. Was that because it was fun to be an expert, or was it because it was fun to see people start understanding things?
I think it was fun to be able to know that I knew it well enough to explain it and that other people would understand it.
Okay. I was thinking that there was some connection between these experiences that you had in King and that you had last year of, you know, being involved in other people's education or participation but it sounds like it really started much earlier than that.
I didn't like the way that expeditionary learning was structured. I don't think it gave a platform for kids to be teaching other kids.
How do you mean? Tell me a little bit more. Because that's one of the things that comes out is that people are, or that it gets touted in these articles, is that kids share information and they can be experts in things and teach other people.
There was like a very obvious divide in the sort of intellectual levels. Like, there were the really smart, it was like these 5 boys were like the smartest of the smart in our grade, and they all spent time together, and they were all singled out by teachers. And then there was like the more average group, which was like me and my friends, and we were always together, and we were grouped by teachers. And then there were the kids who had extra help and were more focused on by teachers, but it wasn't the only time you got like a mix of those groups were in the group projects, but then whoever the smartest kid was would just take over everything because there was such a time constraint. I thought that if you let the other kids take over, it wouldn't turn out as well because they weren't the smartest in the group.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it didn't and the expeditions weren't ones where we knew any information, so there wasn't ways we could teach each other.
And did you gain information as you did the expedition, or was it more like this dash to the finish? Because I remember you did that one where you made the aquatic things that swam and collected samples from the bottom of the pond, and or one group,
yeah,
or maybe.
Okay, so that's a good example. They had a group of 4 boys who they got to take theirs to a competition. The 4 smartest boys got to take theirs to the competition, but no one else did. And then there was like a group of 12 kids who were like the 12 smartest kids in the group, and they got to go on the field trips, but the other kids didn't.
And what were the field trips?
They would like actually go and use them in lakes.
Because I remember some, maybe milfoil or something was discovered
Yeah.
by one of the groups, and there was a lot of talk about that.
I was really mad about that because I wasn't picked to go on the.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else that you want to add? Okay. And your wisdom teeth look much better. Your bruising is going away and your swelling. It's still there a little bit. All right.